Okay, we're live. This is Council Rock School District's Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody. We're going to go around the table. Introduce yourself. I'm Wendy Thomas. I am the Finance Chair.
Jerry Grubb, School Board Director.
Bob Reinhardt, Director of Business Administration.
Mike Thorward, School Director.
Skip Cowan, the President of Cornerstone Advisors.
Ed Tate, School Board Director.
Kevin Carpenter, Chief Investment Officer at Cornerstone.
Robert Frazier, Superintendent.
Kathleen Mulholland, School Board Director.
Matt Frederickson, IT Director.
Joe Messina, Castle Rock Educators Association.
Cindy Lawn, PRESPA President.
Mark Eilick, School Board.
Denise Violet will also be joining us shortly. I'm sorry.
Congratulations.
Very well taken. I'm so sorry. Denise Brooks will be joining us. She had to jump off the call for a moment, but she will be calling back in, so my apologies. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Reinhardt. As soon as he decides who's going to hand out the paperwork.
Important decision.
But it does on my Outlook, my
This one, we keep one of the
Microsoft Office, my office.
Go ahead.
Did you bring enough for everyone?
We have a few agenda items tonight. I'll tell you, I expected this meeting to go pretty smoothly, and I don't think there's a lot of debate that's going to occur tonight. The first thing is Cornerstone will be speaking and giving us the quarterly update on our investments. Then we'll jump into the budget. It's the first discussion of the budget, and I think it'll be pretty clear and understanding on what we want to do there. And I just have two items on the that are going to go on the consent agenda for the board. So let me introduce Kevin Carpuck, Cornerstone, and Skip. I'm not sure which one's going to start.
Well, I think I'm just going to say that, on the way down here, Kevin and I were talking, we're very pleased with where we are in this program. It's taken a couple years, and we're grateful for your patience, but we're really starting to get some traction here. I'm basically Kevin's chauffeur today, so he's going to do the heavy lifting. But let me talk to you a little bit about the interest rate climate, where we are currently. If you go to page 2 of this handout, you'll see the yield curve and how it's changed. And I think somewhat coincidentally, that blue line that you see is the yield curve as of January of 16. I think you hired us in December of 15. So it's pretty much where we started this project. And as you'll recall, interest rates were basically zero. We had a little bit of a steeper yield curve than we do today. But as you can see, and as you all noticed, interest rates are rising. As of June of 17, they were just below 1. As of the last few weeks, they're just above 1%. So we're getting there. It's been agonizingly slow, much slower than we thought it would be. But we're starting to see, when you look at yield, some real difference that Kevin will touch base on in a minute.
Can I ask a real quick question about that? I'm hearing about the Federal Reserve moving up rates. That's priced in this, you think, already? In December's move, I guess?
That's a really good question. My guess is that it is. I mean, yes, we have had, today was an exciting day. We got a new chair of the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell. Jay Powell, as President Bush was, or President, what's his name again? Trump was calling him. But he's going to continue the policies that we've seen in the past. I mean, I think he's interesting. He's a Princeton guy. Has a law degree from Georgetown. Very similar to Janet Doan. I think they're both doves. Are going to be very slow to raise interest rates, which for our purposes is not particularly good, but macroeconomically, hopefully that will be the case. But if you look at this page, if you look at the dot plots, and there's good and bad news here. The good news is that the Fed does think it will continue on a path to normalization and eventually approach a 3% yield. I saw Bill Gross on the TV this afternoon. He says that's nonsense. 2% is where was about as far as they'll get. But the intent is there clearly to normalize interest rates, and rates should continue to rise even under the new chair. The bad news here is the white lines, which are the futures market. So these are people that really have skin in the game, and they're telling us no way. Rates are not going to go up anywhere near the pace or at the levels that the Fed wants them to be. So that, again, in terms of us creating interest income for you folks, that would be a problem. The reality is probably somewhere in between. I do think it's interesting. You look at the dots. You're seeing that green line represents the median, and there are a couple of FOMC committee members who have some pretty dire outlook for yields. You see some of those dots very, very low.
What does FOMC stand for? The Federal Open Market Committee, the folks who decide on the rates, the voting members.
And there are, when I look at this, most of the pundits think that we might have some economic downturn in 19, and therefore, pushing 3% in 2000, after 2019, late 2019, when we should have some slowdown of economic activity is probably unlikely. Nonetheless, even at the rates we have today, we think we're making a difference and that this project has been worthwhile. And like I said, I think we'll see continuing flattening of the yield curve. So short-term rates will continue to go up. For those of you who are in love with this stock market, that's probably not good news. A flattening yield curve usually indicates that we don't have a lot of growth and a lot of energy. But who knows? We look at your tax reform, we get a couple things, and so there's a lot of things that could happen in the future. Nonetheless, we expect modest increases in rates in the short term. We feel that we're making money now, and this has been, like I said, a worthwhile project. And Kevin, if you want to jump in and talk about where we're at and where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we often talk about here, when you hear rates are moving up, and Skip alluded to a flattening yield curve, it doesn't necessarily mean your financing, your bond rates are also going up, right? So when people hear interest rates are going up, they assume a 30-year rate will go up and a 2-year rate will go up all at the same time. What we're actually seeing in the market, and we go out into the market and price out derivatives. We don't implement them, and we certainly don't do it here, but we go and say, what is the market already pricing in? And the market's actually pricing in a flat yield curve right now, where we're actually with everybody else if we place that trade. So what that means is, at the short end, there should be some yield pickup, but at the longer end, we don't foresee a really large move where all of a sudden 30-year rates are going to go to the moon. And I just bring that up because there is always the opposite side of the assets, right? You have a choice to invest in the assets and borrow or spend the assets. So it's just something to keep in mind. On page 4, and this is a little bit of a busy chart, but what this shows is the Wilmington investment summary, and we have information on the other underlying of the other providers. But I wanted to point out that top line on the bottom left where you see almost $90 million in zero coupon bonds. And over the past couple months, our team and your finance staff, Bob and Gail, have been talking and moving money from TD and plug it into the Wilmington Trust account with the idea of having bulleted holdings. And we talked about it before, but this is the first implementation. So we have that core portfolio of, call it $20 million, that we're asking them to manage and create income. But these bulleted holdings are, we tell Wilmington Trust that there's going to be a big expense in January or in June or whatever, and we give them the money and say, buy securities that will mature in time. And the reason we do that is we do have a positive yield pickup, but we also know that regardless of what happens between now and June, I don't want to see fluctuations in value, but I don't care because I know I'm going to get my full value back. And Bob doesn't want to hear fluctuations in value, but we have been implementing that tied to the cash flow projections, and and that's why you see that large number right there. And currently there is over $105 million inside the Wilmington Trust portfolio, and we'll talk about what that is made up of in just a second, but it is all high quality paper.
So we started with what, 20 million with William Trust?
Mhm.
And have they adjusted their fee at all now that it's 80 million more? Or?
No, because 80 of that will be gone within
Okay.
a couple months.
Comes and goes.
And if there was a time where that 20, that permanent, not permanent, that core 20 was really 50, then absolutely we would be pushing that, pushing on them. On page 5, I thought this was kind of interesting. This is the flash report for last month, and above the line is the Wilmington Trust account. The Pliget and TD and FMB of Newtown reports coming a little bit later, but since we get the Wilmington information every day, we can provide this. And I thought it was interesting in October, the portfolio returned 0.11%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but 2 years ago, that would be 6 or 8 months worth of interest, right? Just in 30 days. And we have been gaining some traction there in terms of picking up incremental yield. And I would point out at the bottom, if you look under the assets under that 0.11, that TD started the month at 97 million and ended the month under 20. And that is largely because we took assets out from there and put it into the Wilmington portfolio. On page 6, these are the holdings at Wilmington, and if you look down the current value with the accrued income line at the very top holding, that is, yep, and that is a bond that we know will mature in May for June, a big balloon payment in June. And then about halfway down where you see the 2 Fannie Mae's, the just under 50 million and just over 20 million, those were set up for the February and March requirements to make payments. So we do identify that, and when we talk about yields or when we talk about different things, we can either include them, which we're going to do when we talk about, but we can also strip them out to say, Wilmington, you know, we're kind of telling you what to do. We're not telling them what to buy, but we're saying we need this to mature on this day. Well, the rest of the 20 is what we're really judging them on for whether they're doing their good job or not. Page 7.
Help me understand, just on that page you're looking at, I'm looking at some of the things where the cost was one thing, and oftentimes, not oftentimes, in a few instances, the current value with accrued income is less than the cost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's just because they're on the wrong side of where the interest rate is?
Yeah, so these are really short. As interest rates move up, the price of the bond went down a little bit. Okay. And we'll talk about portfolio stats in a second, but remember, our yield pickup from being in Wilmington is going from ready cash that we can get any day to having a little bit longer time frame. By moving out the curve, we get paid more. Right, and there is intermediate fluctuations there, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But on page 7, each month we get the collateral report from TD. Just to remind everybody, we, by law, any deposits over FDIC limits need to be collateralized with backup with securities. And we've been having discussions with several different banks, not about this in particular, just seeing what the lay of the land is. And banks are all over the place in terms of what they use as collateral. We had a discussion with a bank just 2 weeks ago, and part of our duty is also when folks are pinging Bob and Gail for meetings about that, you know, we'll do vetting on it. But we looked at their underlying holdings, and it was all municipal bonds. And I just said to the gentleman, I'm like, it's an interesting conversation. I'm not going to the board and asking them to have municipal bonds as collateral. You know, and there are other ways you can do it with a letter of credit, but you know, it wasn't compelling enough to even move further and possibly upset the existing banking relationship. But how TD does their collateral, as you can see, these are credit card receivable bonds. So when American Express or Citi or Discover are owed enough money, they securitize what they're owed and they sell them to investors. If you recall from the very beginning, we said, we're not in love with this, which is part of the reason why we're also trimming down, but right now, and this collateral is the backup if TD gets involved, right? But right now, when I talk to folks who trade in these securities, they say, there's plenty of liquidity. It might take a day, I'll read off a QSIP and say, how long would it take you to sell this? And you say maybe a day or two, and we would get good price. And then my follow-up, because I'm, kind of a jerk, I say, well, when will that liquidity go away? And the answer is always, if I knew that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, right? So when times are good, this stuff's fine. But if times get rough, that's where things get a little hairy. The one set of holdings that I have in my bag that isn't in this report is the Pliget holdings, and the reason it isn't in the report is it's 33 pages of a PDF. But I can tell you that it's all not the Pliget Prime, the Pliget that we're in is all CDs and treasury bonds right now. I'm happy to share that. I did send it to Bob, that it was just to get it into a PowerPoint was, going to be.
If anyone wants a copy of that, I have a PDF of all the holdings,
Right.
but I didn't copy it for everybody.
Yeah, but again, we do review that, and as we sit here today, nothing is outside the bounds of certainly law, but also nothing when we look at that in the holdings causes us any consternation.
So Kevin, are you saying you're not in Pliget Prime because there are some things in there that you're not going for?
Pliget Prime allows for commercial paper, it allows for bankers' deposits. It's not that we're not comfortable with it. You don't get any yield pickup for even a modest amount of risk. Why, I think Pliget Prime's yielding 1 and change right now, and the Pliget institutional class is yielding 97 basis points. So for 5 or 7 basis points, why would we even in a million years say, we're going to be greedy, we're going to pick up those nickels in front of a steamroller? If something happens and that spread widens, we'll have, we can have that discussion. That is part of the policy. If you remember that it takes two signatories to make that kind of move or to add, so with the policy, it would require, I think it's Bob and someone, and I don't remember if we've already named who could sign on,
Dr. Fraser.
or a signing of Dr. Fraser. So yeah, it isn't worth the risk, even though the risk right now is almost nothing, just because the yield pickup. But if you get a page 8.
Before we move on, can I ask you a question about TD?
Sure.
So as we're peeling money away from TD, are we still getting that, I don't want to say preferred rate, but they increased the yield rate to us last year when we got involved. So are they still giving us that rate?
Yeah, we're not, well, we're actually getting higher now. They bumped the yield up to 0.9%. We're certainly not going to get super preferred rates as we,
Where did we start? 0.2? Is that where we started?
at 0.2,
Yeah.
And we're up to 0.9. I'm sure if we had 100 and some odd million, we could probably get up to 1, but right now, 90 bips, 0.9% is their going rate, and which is, and I'm going to read off a couple numbers, but that's pretty, well, I already did, but that's pretty competitive with, between 0.94 and 0.97 for Pliget. But what we think is attractive is that Mullington Trust account is actually net of fees yielding over 1.2% right now. So we're getting a big pickup. We have high quality stuff that is in the district's name, and the risk is really that over short periods of time, rates will move up and we'll have a mark-to-market loss. Not that they're going to book any realized loss, just that there's some fluctuation. But what we're looking at here on page 8 is The gray box is a peer group of other money markets. So basically, and these aren't even government money markets, we're setting the bar a little bit higher so they can hold stuff that we wouldn't hold. But I still think it makes sense. The government money market is kind of a really low bar as far as we're concerned. But you can see over the last quarter, year to date, and 1.5 years, the reason Wilmington doesn't have a return for the last 1.5 is we haven't had them that long. But over the last quarter, the Wilmington Trust portfolio, and I'm pointing that one out just because it's off the chart. It's the orange letter E, the triangle. That means that that 0.33% that they returned last quarter was in the top 1% of these money markets. And part of that is there was good timing, but also they have, they have a higher yield right now than a lot of other money markets. And then you can see where 3-month T-bills, that's really the base of, our benchmark, because if the district had done nothing, you could always just roll 3-month T-bills and know you were getting that. And you look down and you see Pliget was about 0.22 last quarter, TD was about 0.17. And it doesn't seem like a lot, the difference between 0.3 and 0.2, but you're talking about 0.4 to 0.5% per year, which with these minuscule type numbers is actually fairly significant. And by shifting into Wilmington, we've been able to add value. And we think over time, if you look at the year to date, the spreads are very tight in terms of Pliget versus Wilmington. But we think over time, the Wilmington value add will increase. The one thing I will note is as we get more data, more history behind us, we will also be introducing ideas of risk-adjusted returns and all that good stuff. Right now, we're looking at the actual risk of the holdings, but we'll be able to see over time who's introducing risk and who isn't. So with that, and again, Skip open with the thought, and I'll close with the thought that we are happy with how the program is running right now. We think the district, back when we said maybe we can pick up 2 more basis points for you, you went through a lot of work to get this done, and now we're starting to reap some of the benefit of that. So as we sit here today, there are no changes we're looking to make. We're going to keep working with Bob and Gail to make sure that the assets are where they should be and monitor those. But other than that,
real quick question, Kevin.
Sure.
I always look at this, and if we were doing what we always did, we move money within Pliget and all that, what would you quantify, looking at this size of the investments, that we would pick up over a period of time based on the number of basis points that we're looking at change here?
Right.
What it sounds to me is we are doing better than Pliget, is what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But give me a term when I look at our budget double. I don't know, went from, what did it go from?
500 to $1 million.
Yeah.
Not that I'm watching.
Yeah, I know, I picked that up, but you said that's the only line item in the budget went up 100%.
Yeah.
But where do you see it being compared to, if I would have kept doing what I'm doing compared to now? And you might say, oh, that's a tough question, but
Yeah.
I'm giving it to you.
Well, it's one that Skip asked me on the way down and said I was a dope for not knowing. Well, I mean, just the rough math, if we can pick up, 0.3%, and on average, there's, call it 100 million, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I can actually quantify that, but it's it's a number somewhere between above 200,000 and below 350,000.
So you're gonna blow that $1 million out of the water issue.
Remember, some of the money's still making 0.9, and I will do my best. But Skip will be running the meeting if I don't blow the number out. Sorry, boss. Mom will make you dinner.
Well, you can make sure everyone knows that I didn't ask permission when I increased that budget.
I actually saw that in a draft right before I came down, and I said, how did I not pick that up before? So, but no, I think the $1 million is absolutely attainable, assuming we do get another rate rise, that nothing funky happens in the market that would require the Fed to cut rates. But we also are creating some by doing the bulleted strategy, we may give up a little bit on the upside, right? Because TD, obligate will raise the rates as rates rise, but we're locking in. So if something funky does happen and the Fed has to cut rates, we're not going to be nearly as affected in this setup. So, but
Okay, the duration of the loan.
0.9 years. But
You're gonna hear that I bought natural gas and I've done the same thing. I've locked in our heating for the winter. So we'll talk
I
about.
thought you meant your personal investment.
Yeah.
I was like,
You meant the Shaw Council run. Now you guys, it's not necessarily our business. This was, for those people who are paying attention from home, this was a new venture. This was not something which, and I'll give, Mark Violet credit for it, this was not something which had been a mainstay in your, it is, don't push it. This was not a mainstay in your field by anyone. There was really no one in this space. So we were a leader in that. Have more people bought into it with the success that we've had? Not with our success, but have more people acknowledged it's something to do now?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been having a lot more meetings, and even for clients that we manage a pension fund for, we've been able to provide some guidance here. But I will tell you, by and large, there's a lot of ignorance surrounding this still, right? People, talking to some folks around the state, they say, well, Pliget Prime's great. I said, yeah, it sure is, until maybe it isn't. So, some folks are finding religion, other folks are just saying, I'll take the easy, higher yielding thing and assume that if it goes bad, not just for me, I'm not going to be the one.
Only, right.
Exactly.
Well, CYA.
Yeah.
And that's the most important. I appreciate the 200,000 to 300,000 in additional funds coming to the district. I really do. That's very important. What's most important to me is the safety and security, and also the fairness in how we're being charged. So when we dug into Pliget, we were first told $500,000 in SIPC insurance, and then $20 million in custodial insurance, which came months later.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're still above the 20 million mark with Pliget, correct?
Well, for the district's operating cash, we're right. If we're above 20, it's 20 million.
It was like 1999.
In the bond funds, that's what pushes it up to the 60 some.
That's great. And again, I appreciate the 200,000 to 300,000, but the most important thing that these two gentlemen can tell us is that our money is safe. And from an independent view, our money is safe. The yield that we're getting is fair, and the fees that we're being charged are appropriate. And that's
And it's being reported to you on a regular basis. I never reported to you. I was always comfortable with where we were, but I had never looked at it to this detail either. So there's a lot of different things that you're involved with.
And my hope is operationally for you and for Gail, that this is not with a great deal of extra effort to have this engagement.
I think I was more nervous about Gail starting a $70 million wire to Wilmington than she was. There were a lot of people with eyes making sure that money got in.
Well, we did the 50, and then we had to wait, and we did 20 later.
Yeah, not often you're going to bump into a $50 million wire limit. Some of you may on a personal basis, but on a one day limit.
It's a investor stuff, yeah.
great job.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, when I worked at Irving Trust, we used to get paper checks for billions. Those bizarre.
Okay, we're ready to go to the next item, and we may be able to get out of here by quarter.
All right.
What?
Thanks. Good to see you. Thanks.
No. First discussion of the 2018-19 budget, and what we need to do at first is determine what we're going to do. Commonwealth has set the Act 1 index, you all know it's 2.4%. Last year is 2.5%. The year before that was 2.4%. By January 26th, we're required to either state in a resolution that we are not going to exceed the Act 1 index of 2.4, or we have to produce a preliminary budget showing that we need a tax increase of above 2.4. So that is what that is all about. I am suggesting that we pass a resolution in November, way before the deadline, but in November saying that we will not exceed the 2.4% tax increase. Let me go on. What I do want to show you is, if you look, this is our current year calculations of our real estate taxes. I'm not going to go crazy with it. We go over every number, but with the 2.4, we could increase the millage rate of 120.71 by 4.4%, which would be 2.9 mils. So we could increase our taxes to 223.61. And that would increase it, if I used the same assessed value, it would increase the revenue by $3.6 million. Does everyone get what I'm saying there? Now what I've done is I've taken the most recent report from the county, and this is our assessed value is no longer 1,280,000,000. It is now 287 million. I did the calculations. So from the assessed values going, that's new building and assessed values going up, we pick up another $900,000. So we have available, if we would want to, raise $4.5 million of additional revenue to support the 2018-19 budget. I am telling you, I'm certain that is enough to balance the budget, and I'm telling you today that I am recommending that we do the resolution and pass the 2.4%. Understanding that 2.4 is the maximum amount, not that we have to go to that, and the resolution is not saying we're going to go to that, but it's saying we're not going to exceed it and go for exceptions or go for a referendum or anything like that. Everyone's good with that? I'd expect that that's a good thing. Okay, go ahead, Matt. I have the draft of what our budget calendar looks like. I'm just going to point out a few things. April 19th is where I would think that we could adopt the preliminary budget. And at the same time, I believe it would be the night that we could do the budget forum. If you remember, we used to have it a separate night and everything. And in some tough years, people came out and watched it and all that. For the last 2 years, I think you guys sat in the audience and I spoke to the camera, and it was not well held or anything. So what I'm saying now is that I do it at 6:30 the night we pass the preliminary budget, and we could even cancel it if we believe it's going to be where it is, but I want to have that on the calendar at least. Is everyone good with that? Other thing I want to say is right now, I have that May 17th, we would pass the final budget. You may say, why are you picking May 17th?
Why are you picking May 17th?
Because June 21st is getting tighter, where the tax bill's going out to the tax collectors. I'd rather do it in May and have the tax bills out in time than waiting and not being able to give the millage rate. If we have to, because something comes up, we can extend it and go later. So I'm just saying right now, this is what we're planning. Of course, if something goes haywire or something, we can extend it. But this is the preliminary review.
Bob, on the contribution this year that we're paying now, what's the contribution, the percentage of our?
Retirement?
Yeah.
32.57%. I expect it to go up another 2.5% or something like that.
So up to 35 or 30?
It's gonna.
So what would that translate to into dollars, roughly, ballpark, if you had to? So this additional 2.5%, what's our base?
On wages.
109 million.
109 million in salary? So it's another $2.5 billion. Let's just call it that, another 2.5.
Except that half of that will be paid by the state, so
So it's another
locally,
$1.5
it's gonna
billion.
be just about $1 million.
So that's what I'm just saying. I'm just trying to, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just trying to look at that number offset against what was the number that we went up in?
Go back to.
Yeah, go back to the change in the.
4.5 million.
Yeah, but what did it go, the increase for real estate, 900,000. 900,000, so it's, what I was trying to understand, so that incremental value, if I look at it by apportionment.
It almost upsets.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
Well, then we need to talk about healthcare costs, 23 million, if it goes up 10% or goes 8%, it hasn't been going up 2% or 3%, so that's another $2 million. So you start adding up the numbers, and those are the two areas that I'm gonna tell you I'm concerned about. The other thing is, this would be the year, if we're looking at $128 million in capital projects, I showed you what's going on with that. This is the year that we'll be gaining some savings from closing of Richboro Middle. So if we're gonna increase the debt service line item to be able to fund 128 million, this would be the year to go without increasing taxes due to debt service. So there's a lot going on, there's moving parts.
My point for this was,
Okay.
and I'm not arguing.
You're going too far down
No,
the
you're
road.
fine. My point for it, it's fine, but my point for it was, even at the 2.4, that still results in flat academics. When you take the increase in healthcare, the increase in retirement, and the increase in debt service, it really results in, from an academic calendar, academic apportionment, it's flat. There's not going to be new services, it's flat. That's all I'm trying to get. I'm not arguing for or against. Truthfully, the 2.4% seems reasonable to me. I don't think you want to go more than that. But it's not gonna, you're still gonna be looking for savings to reduce things if you want to try and do things creatively.
And Jerry, we are always struggling with Doug's projects and us getting 3 million. We're gonna use up quite a bit of the accumulated money.
We just talked
So, I mean, we could talk about a lot of things to fix if we're gonna go up to 2.4. And I shouldn't say completely fix, but there's ways that we would better the district's position financially. And I'm not saying we're gonna do it, it's just that there's gonna be a list of things for us to consider.
Not sure I understood the point. So you're saying that at 2.4, assuming Doug's stuff doesn't change, you're saying we could, I'm sorry?
Nothing, keep going, Jerry.
I'm saying we moved $3.3 million into the capital reserve this year. Our fund balance went down, I think, about $1 million.
Right.
If we continue to do that, our fund balance is gonna drop.
You're talking about using fund balance?
Yes.
Okay.
So
thanks.
then I'm talking about Doug saying 3 million's not enough. We're recognizing it, saying, yeah, maybe it isn't. But we can't keep going to 3 million with our fund balance dropping too. So there's things that I'm not saying are terrible, but we could fix things too. And if you say, we're never gonna fund all Doug's projects, and there's no merit in his projects, which I don't think any of us think that, then we don't have to fix those things. But
Right, you have more money for academics,
Yes.
but that's not that's,
Yeah.
I think you summed it up when you said, I don't think anybody agrees that we can ignore
Right.
facilities.
Everyone good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Timekeeping system vendor selection, you were aware that we've talked about this before, about the need for a timekeeping system for Labor Standard Act, and if you want to get into all of that, I think I should bring my presentation up from before when we did this. But we did issue a RFP January of 17. We had 4 respondents. We interviewed them March 17. That was really with myself, Gail, Christine, and some other people from her office, and Rick Cargus and Terry Frank. We brought that down to 2 vendors. It was Frontline and I think Time Clock Plus, I think it was, yeah. And then we expanded the team to the Crespo leadership. Cindy Long was there, and I went up to her before I talked about this tonight, saying, I'm not blindsiding you, but I'm going to mention your name. So she is here. She can make any comments she would like if you'd like to hear from her. But let's go to the next slide. Rationale. We work with this company Frontline already. They have ASOP, that is our substitute service provider that does all the sub services and all that, and is actually working with Insight at this point, and they use them also to do that. We have the information in place. This is now another module to put on that we could now have a timekeeping system that is part of their system already, so it makes sense. It'll integrate easily. There could be some additional equipment depending on what we want at the back end of it. You know, what are the people going to do to actually time in and out? And we may have to purchase some equipment to do that. We haven't determined that. I will tell you, Crespo will be very much involved in our decisions on how this rolls out, and we're bringing them in front of this. So they're going to be very much involved in how this gets implemented. If we use other modules, and I hope you don't ask me which they are, because that's more of a pristine side of the office, but they do have other modules that we could purchase and they give us a 10% discount. The headquarters is in Malvern, PA. So they're very close, and I think that this was the best answer. When you talk to our technology people, they felt it was comfortable that the integration will go easy compared to trying to build reports that are going to go overnight to all these different vendors, and this seems like it would be the easiest way to go. I'll just keep going. Time and attendance subscription. Each year we have to pay $29.33 for users. The agreement that you're going to see only says 500 users, and you're going to see it's less money. It's just that if we need more users, I want to make sure you know that I'm not lowballing at 500. We said 600 by far would be the most.
It's $29.33 per user, 600 users.
Yes. Yeah.
Year.
Right,
Here.
that's that, when you show it, like, it's not per to 600, it's each.
Yes.
Per 600.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And then substitutes, that is a different set of people, but that it only costs $60.76. The total estimated cost is $20,430. You're going to see, when you look at the agreement, it's $17,500 or something such as that. I just put this in because I don't want you guys to say, you told me $17,000 and now you're increasing it because we need more licenses, so that's why I put that where it is. Then there's also a one-time startup fee of $7,000. We can delay the start of the implementation for 90 days, and you'll say, why are you doing that? I will tell you because the end of the year is coming. We have to get W-2s out, we got to get the 1095s out and everything else. That our departments are going to be focused on doing all the year-end stuff. So we would like to delay it. The price is locked for 3 years, and funds have been included in the 17-18 budget to do this. I'm asking you to approve the contract. Rob Cox worked on it with Christine. I think we're still going back and forth about the final language, but I would like to have that approved in November. And if you want to ask Cindy anything, she is here and she'll be very honest about her feelings.
You have three things going on. One, it was regulatory requirement to do something.
Yes.
Is there a cost savings? And the cost savings come in two ways. Are you going to have less staff required to manage this on an ongoing basis?
I don't want to say anything about that right now. I'm sorry.
Okay, so I would say it sounds like there may be a potential for that. I just have to ask. And then the second thing is there's also better administration of the expense. So that can go either way. We may be spending more, or we may be spending less because we're actually going to pay people for their actual hours.
Our exposure to any type of lawsuit or anything's going to go down greatly.
That's exposure. I'm saying our actual expenditure in terms of.
If people are working, and I presume there are,
Make it well.
It could go out because we need, if they suffer work, we're responsible. for paying them.
Exactly.
And
That's
right now,
fair.
we have no record of saying if someone worked or not worked. The only time timesheet goes in is when people say, here, I worked. But if people are working and not putting the timesheets in, we have no record of that, so according to Fair Labor Standards Act, we don't have some of the records that we're required to have.
That was the regulatory. I'm trying to understand, so I mean, there's a potential for some break even if there's some adjustment from a salary perspective for buying it, and then the other part of it becomes fairness that we're actually paying people for what they do.
Is everyone okay with this? Okay.
I'd like to hear
Okay.
your thoughts on it, since you brought it up.
I'm fine with it. I just wanted to warn her that this could be happening before this happened.
No, I understood. I understood. Is there anything in particular you want to ask, or?
No, just overall, I know it's a shift, and I just wanted to.
Well, just the basics, and I certainly talked at length to Bob about this. We have support staff who find that this is a little disrespectful in the sense that they, they feel it's another reason that they're not valued in the way that they feel like they should be. And that being that their time would be tracked minute by minute, or at least the assumption is that. And that, none of the other employees would be. Even though the rationale, or one of the rationales for this is that this would help solve the PINKs, which is a terrible system. We get it. My support staff that are involved with PINKs are very happy to get rid of them. So, but the issues about lateness, having to leave early or leaving early, that sort of thing it's universal. It's not just support staff. And so that I think, and of course, the support staff being in the offices and various other places, they, to be perfectly honest, they know what's going on in the schools. So the feeling out there is that they'd like to see a situation where time was tracked for everybody. And obviously, that would be a greater financial burden. But, we'll have to spend time talking about how this is going to roll out. We talked about having, using one of the schools, potentially North, because I'm there, as being a pilot to see what, what problems we're going to face as this gets rolled out. But, there are a lot of support staff who welcome the possibility of being paid for the time that they're putting in and not being paid for currently. So we'll have to see how that, that comes to fruition, how the rollout goes, what kinds of permissions and, ahead of time issues.
We rolled it out where I work, and I swear the biggest issue is when somebody forgets.
Oh, yeah.
The person who has to put it, the manager, somebody has to and fix it. And honest to God, a year later, that's still the biggest hassle about it. It's just when somebody forgets to check in. It's not a big deal to check in. Once people start doing it, by and large, most people, at least that's how it went for us.
Mhm.
But that who's going to fix it when you get to do it.
And so, in that line, I guess I have to look at, which is, well, Christine would be the one who would know. Do we have to make, is there any amendment to reflect this? I don't know, and it doesn't need to be one.
Yeah.
And do we need policy or administrative reg around the policies that you speak about? We're gonna have a process for who puts it in, how much time between the event and the,
Well, they have 90 days. They're dealing 90 days.
No, yeah, oh, you're saying the implement, I'm saying
Procedural steps are going
For
to.
most
Because some of those
people,
may-
like it.
Because I can see where some of those things, I don't want to say that, and I say this respectfully, which is, some things, some of those practices might lead to grievance, which could allow us to have a process step that is pre-grievance, which provides some aspect of due process internally
Right.
to head off a grievance, because I can see that potentially.
Right.
So Christine and you guys will,
This is gonna be an evolution.
I agree.
And,
But we still have records.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Which you kind of need to have. I mean, whether people like it or not, we
Right.
need to have.
I get it.
Okay. Are we good with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
and then you just tell us your gas.
Pardon?
Your gas.
Yes, this is the gas issue. Recently purchased November 17 to March 18. It's 42,000 decatherms. And I'm not gonna try to explain to you what a decatherm is. That's something to do with BTUs and everything else. But last year, I just wanted to show you a comparison. Our commodity price went up, that's a penny. So that's $1, I'm saying. That's a penny. It's 6.8 cents, it's 2.18. The basis is the same basis, so there's a commodity price and then there's a basis. The basis is the provider's profit, transportation to get here and all that other type of stuff. So all in all, it went up 1.73%. If you calculate this along with the utility cost, which is PICO that brings it here to us, this line item for the whole year is just under $250,000. So I just wanted to tell you, this transaction's been done already, but now I put it for you guys to confirm. And I just wanted to
We
explain.
empowered you to do that last year, or at some point you were.
Yes.
You were granted, and you didn't do anything.
No, this is just that I have to have it confirmed with you. And I took it off of, Amerex called me and said, if the prices have gone down, you're exposed right now, let's lock it up. Because I will tell you, I looked at it and it's still going down a little more.
We don't know if you're perfect.
So yeah, I won't get it bottom out all the time, but we're well within our budget, we're in good shape with this, so that'll be in there too. I think that's it.
Yeah, that's it. Is that
Yes,
it?
well, you know, I have one other thing
Yeah.
to tell you. We got agreements from the Bucks County IU today for their services for non-public schools using our Title I and I think Title II money, and it's just mundane agreements that I'm gonna put in front of the board too, that we just have to have the board approve. So it's for the IU to do it, they do it every year, it's just,
Routine.
yes, routine, yes.
Okay. Board comment,
Thank you.
public comment. Okay, thank you all. Meeting